I have spent 19 years reading the past the way other men read weather charts. Kesh Hollow sits at the throat of the Dranmore High Peaks, a fortified way station built into rock that has killed more travelers than any raider ever managed. And my job has always been the same small, unglamorous thing. Tell the difference between a storm that will pass and a storm that will bury you. Tell the difference between a man who will walk out on his own legs by morning and a man who won't. I got good at it. Too good, some said. In the years after my brother Aldous froze half a day's walk from this same door while I stood reading the exact signs that told me he still had time, and did nothing with what I knew until the knowing was worthless. So when the Queen's retreat came through the pass at first light, I was already outside, already reading. They came fast and wrong, a column moving like men who expect to be dead by noon, dragging a litter between two exhausted bearers. Word had gone ahead of them. The supply bridge over the Kesh Gorge had gone down in the night, half the royal escort with it, and the Dranmore Court's triage doctrine, old law, older than the crown itself, says a wounded sovereign too far gone to survive transport is left with shelter and mercy, not carried at the cost of the column that still has a war to fight. They set the litter down at my gate. A captain with frost-white knuckles told me, without quite looking at me, that Her Majesty Ithra Voss Dranmore would not see nightfall, that the doctrine required them to leave her where she'd at least die warm, and that the Vesic raiders coming up the eastern switchback would be at my door within 2 days, regardless of what I chose to do about any of it. Then they left her with me and kept walking, because that is what doctrine tells frightened, disciplined people to do. I knelt over her anyway and did what I've always done. I read her. Her left hand was black to the second knuckle. True frostbite, ugly but old news. That wasn't what would kill her. Her breathing was shallow but even. No rattle in it. No drowning sound. Her pulse, when I found it under a torn collar stiff with dried blood, was slow but sure, a mountain-bred heart pacing itself through cold the way mine had learned to as a boy. Whatever the column's own medic had seen when he pronounced her lost, I didn't see it now. What I saw was a woman running the same quiet math my brother's body had run for 6 hours before it lost, except hers hadn't lost yet. I have never once, in 19 years, been wrong about who still has time. Travelers used to call it a gift. The way I could stand over a stranger half buried in snow and say, calm as ordering supper, this one lives, that one doesn't, get the healer for him and save your strength for the other. It isn't a gift, it's arithmetic done so many times it stops feeling like arithmetic. Pulse against cold, breath against altitude, the particular color a hand turns when it's dying, versus the color it turns when it's only frightened. I learned the difference the hard way, watching my brother's hand do both those things in the same afternoon, and guessing wrong about which one mattered. I had been wrong, once, about what to do with knowing. I carried her inside myself, because there was no one left to help me. Kesh Hollow's stores were not built for royalty. They were built for men like me, alone through winters that don't care what crown you wore in some warmer country. I peeled her cracked field coat off the frostbitten hand and packed it in snowmelt against skin, not heat, because heat too fast kills tissue heat too slow can't reach. I forced river salt broth past her cracked lips a spoon at a time, patient as prayer. And when her body finally started shaking, the good kind of shaking, the kind that means a person is fighting instead of surrendering, I wrapped her in every blanket the way station owned and lay against her back myself, because at altitude, in that kind of cold, another human body is sometimes the only medicine that works fast enough. She woke enough, once, near midnight, to focus pale amber eyes on my face and ask, in a voice like grinding stone, why a mountain warden was disobeying a doctrine 300 years older than his door. Because you're not dying, I told her. You're just cold. There's a difference, and I've spent my whole life learning it. The doctrine doesn't care about the difference. I'm not the doctrine. She didn't answer that. Her eyes closed again, but her hand, the good one, the one that still had color, found the sleeve of my coat and held on, the way a person holds on to the one thing in a collapsing world that hasn't collapsed yet. I sat with that grip through the worst hours, the ones just before dawn when a body decides whether it wants to keep fighting the cold or finally give in to it. I have sat that particular watch more times than I can count, over strangers, over travelers whose names I never learned, over my own brother in a different room a lifetime ago. It is always the same watch. You do not get to know, sitting there, whether your reading of a person was right until their body answers for itself. All you can do is stay close enough to hear the answer when it comes, instead of walking away before it does. By the second day, the Eastern Watch Bell told me what I already knew. The Vesic scouts had found the switchback faster than the retreating column expected, and they'd reach Kesh Hollow well before any relief could. I had one emergency flare charge left, the kind meant to call for help across the whole valley. Meant, if I'm honest, To save my own life on a night exactly like this one, alone in a way station with raiders coming, and no garrison behind me, I had spent the rest of my medical stores keeping a frostbitten queen breathing. I had, by any doctrine that measures a man's survival odds, already made the wrong choice twice. I burned the flare anyway, not to call for rescue for myself, but aimed low and long across the eastern ridge, the pattern every mountain garrison in the Dranmore Reach is trained to read as a warning. Enemy on the switchback. Hold the pass. It would bring soldiers. It would also tell every raider in the valley exactly where I was, with no reserve charge left to call for help a second time if I'd guessed wrong about who was coming. I hadn't guessed wrong about her. I chose not to guess wrong about this either. The Vesic scouts hit the outer gate at dawn, 6 of them against 1 warden and a queen too weak to lift a blade. I am not, and have never claimed to be, a soldier, but Kesh Hollow's stone corridors were built by men who understood that a narrow door beats numbers, and 19 years of knowing exactly where ice will hold and where it won't gave me the only advantage I needed. I dropped the western landing under the first 2 men with a single cut rope and held the rest at the choke point with a boar spear and stubbornness, until the garrison horns I'd gambled on finally answered from the ridge, and the raiders broke rather than be caught between my door and a relief column's spears. When it was over, I went back inside expecting to find her gone, the way I'd once gone back for Aldous, and found only proof I'd known too late. She was awake, sitting up, watching the doorway like she'd counted every second of the fight from the sound alone. "You should have let the doctrine decide," she said, when I sat down across from her, hands shaking now that there was finally nothing left to do with them. "I did let something decide," I said. "It just wasn't the doctrine. It was you. What was actually happening in front of me, instead of what everyone was afraid might be." Her guard found us 3 hours later, come back at last with a relief column and grim faces braced for a burial detail. I watched the captain's expression break in real time when he saw her sitting upright in the way station's one good chair, her blackened hand bandaged, color back in her face, alive in every way his doctrine had told him to stop hoping for. He didn't have words for it, neither for a long moment did she. What she said instead, quiet enough that it was clearly meant only for me, was simpler than any speech a court could have written for her. 19 years reading Who Has Time Left, she said, and you spent every reserve you had proving I was one of them. I told you, I said. I've only ever been wrong once about that. I wasn't going to let it happen twice. She didn't reach for my sleeve this time. She reached for my hand instead, the whole one, and held it the way a person holds something they've decided, deliberately, not to let doctrine take from them again. And for the first time in 19 years, the knowing I carried felt like something worth having, instead of something I'd have to live with not using in time.